When IDW compiled the Archie Comics run of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles adventures, they omitted 6 issues, causing a noticeable discontinuity in the series. Today's video delves into the saga behind these missing issues, pinpointing the reasons for their exclusion. We'll also examine why Archie Comics dared to publish such volatile content. Join us as we uncover the forbidden tales from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles adventures. It's intriguing that while choosing to omit issues 32 to 37, IDW didn't ban the entire arc. The banned story started in small backups until it took over in issue 28. Oddly enough, issue 28 to 31 were reprinted by IDW. The intricacies of this plotline were previously discussed in my Ninjara video, but we'll revisit them to provide context to the omitted arc. It all started in Chinatown, where Zhu Shi, a firefighter who was friends with April, was kidnapped, along with his mentor, Fu Sheng. Zhu Shi wasn't an ordinary firefighter, if there's even such a thing. No, he possessed the spirit of the warrior dragon, enabling his metamorphosis into a humanoid dragon. Those familiar with the toy line might recognize this as Hothead. In any case, the ninjas that kidnapped Zhu Shi were able to take his dragon form down by using a mysterious powder that reverted him back to human. When April approached Splinter for assistance, they learned that Zhu Shi and his mentor were taken to Hiroshima, Japan. The kidnapper was a gangster known as Chien Khan, who wanted to use the spirit of the warrior dragon to destroy a nuclear power plant, thus claiming countless souls for the demon No-Itai-Dar. You may ask why, and, well, let's just say that Chien Khan wasn't a fan of humans. Upon reaching Hiroshima via cargo plane, Splinter, April, and the Turtles made their way through the city sewers. As they journeyed to the Peace Memorial Park, the atomic blast epicenter in 1945, they encountered a mysterious gang mistaking them for rival ninjas, further complicating matters when actual ninjas ambushed them. After subduing the enigmatic gang, whose significance will be revealed later, Splinter regales the Turtles with his childhood memories of Hiroshima. He was 15 when the bomb hit. He was learning Zen Buddhism. While he and his great-uncle, Gyoji, were at a safe distance from the explosion, Gyoji was blinded by the intense light, and Splinter's mother whisked them away from the radioactive aftermath. Splinter never returned to Hiroshima until then. Chien Khan also coerced Fu Sheng to help him control the dragon spirit, threatening to kill a poor girl's life, a girl named Yuki Momisha who would later become one of the series' supporting characters. Also, after learning about the Turtles being in Japan, Chien Khan sent his warrior Ninjara after them. Ninjara attacked the Turtles, who were really impressed by her, especially Raphael. The poor romantic guy lost before he even started fighting. Ninjara's confrontation with the Turtles was cut short upon seeing the Dragon Warrior approaching a nuclear power plant. And if you're wondering, no, for obvious reasons, Hiroshima doesn't have a nuclear power plant in real life. Ninjara was okay with Chien Khan releasing a demon, but she wasn't on board with the whole nuclear apocalypse thing. No-Itai-Dar was released and attacked the Dragon Warrior. This interrupted the hypnosis that was put on him by Chien Khan, and at the last minute, the deities that created Japan, Izanagi and Izanami, interfered to send No-Itai-Dar back to where he came from. That's what's classically known as a Deus Ex Machina. Back at Chien Khan's lair, he was trying to sacrifice Oyuki to please the demon, but Fu Sheng freed himself to save her. That was when we all discovered that Chien Khan was a mutated dog. He wasn't an actual mutant. In the past, Chien was human, and to save himself from sure death, he made a pact with No-Itai-Dar in exchange for helping the demon conquer Earth. No-Itai-Dar fused him with his own dog, and that's how he became the leader of the Dog Star Gang. The name kinda gave it away, to be honest. In any case, Chien Khan escaped when the Turtles came to the rescue. Ninjara and Oyuki stayed with them as they took a little holiday in Japan. They were surprised by that mysterious gang from the sewers who were really just looking for them. Oh, and April and Zhu Shi kissed. It was at this point that, if you were reading the IDW collections, the crossover with the Mutanimals would take place. But what was the deal with this gang? Well, that's why you're watching this video. The subsequent 6 issues were primarily penned by Steve Murphy, with some assistance from Eric Talbot. The artwork was handled by Chris Allen, Brian Thomas, Rod Allarenshaw, Sid Fontainebleau, John DeAgostino, Gary Fields, and Barry Grossman. It turned out that the gang looking for them was sent by a sumo wrestler known as Tai San. You probably know this character from his celebrity name, Tattoo. Tattoo's chihuahua, a dog named Inky, had been abducted by the Yen brothers, who were involved in illegal betting activities. They left a note that encouraged Tai San to deliberately lose his upcoming sumo match, otherwise the dog would meet his maker. For Tai San, losing this match would signify the end of his sumo career. The turtles figured out a plan of action. Some of them would rescue Inky during the match, while the rest would stay behind to protect Tattoo from any retaliations. The match took place in Sumo Fest 92, an event sponsored by Stump International Wrestling. Yeah, Stump has a lot of reach. Tattoo won the match at the same time as Inky was rescued. Just like they suspected, the Yen brothers tried to get revenge on Tai San, but in the end, Inky himself had the last bite on them. The issue concluded with Tattoo presenting the turtles with an ancient, unique sword. The reason for omitting this issue eludes me, as it ties up all the loose ends. True, Tattoo looks unusually yellow, but that's hardly this arc's gravest fault. Previously, I highlighted Eric Talbot's contribution alongside Murphy solely for this installment. Eric Talbot was the brain behind the characters of Tattoo and Inky. This wasn't Inky's last appearance. He was the star of a backup story in the first April miniseries. In it, Inky fell from his hotel room window and landed in a pool. After that, he met a poodle he fell in love with. After this, Inky made a cameo during the events of City at War in the Mirage comics, a book Talbot was doing tones for. His next appearance was in a backup story of the last big arc of the Adventures book, a story titled North to Alaska. In that story, Inky's cage got lost in an Alaskan airport. He was freed by a wolf and was inducted into their pack. During his time with the wolves, he helped them rescue the leader's mate, who was held prisoner by some humans. Inky used his natural charm to distract the humans and allow the wolves to free their own. The saga ended with Inky still having adventures with the wolves, but it was implied that Tattoo was looking for him. Unfortunately, the book was cancelled, and we never got the chance to see the two reunite. As for Tattoo, he was used in the TV show in 1991 by David Wise, at the same time the toy came out. While the toy version was depicted as an ally for the turtles, the cartoon adaptation by David Wise was an antagonistic, mutated hamster. We don't talk about it. One interesting gimmick about the toy was that it was customizable. It came with tattoo stickers, and it was up to the player to place them wherever they wanted. This made this action figure look different from kid to kid. But enough of this detour. Let's return to the turtles' global escapades. I mentioned earlier that Splinter, April, and the turtles arrived at Hiroshima by hiding in a plane's cargo. Well, their return to the States wasn't as straightforward. April, Oyuki, Chushi, and Fusheng took a plane, while Splinter, Ninjara, and the turtles took a different, more complicated path. And it wasn't to stay out of trouble, as they would always talk to people without creating any kind of panic. No, they were actually motivated by Splinter to take this road back home. Their destination was Tibet. Once in Shanghai, they bartered for a small boat to travel up the Yangtze River. The ship served its purpose only up to a point, after which Splinter traded it for camping supplies. They then boarded a train passing through the eastern hills of Tibet. Whether traveling from Hiroshima to Tibet in this manner is feasible is something we can overlook, due to the imaginative nature of comic books. The group stopped in the town of Shigatse, west of Lhasa. There they traded another piece of Splinter's armor for some yaks. After journeying across much of China, they camped overnight, and it was then that Splinter revealed their final destination, the Crystal Palace, a monastery that, contrary to its name, wasn't made of crystal. This was where the Charlie Llama, Splinter's spiritual teacher, resided. Okay, yes, this was a character that was a pun on the Dalai Lama. You might begin to see why this story was banned, but I'll delve deeper into that later. On their route to the monastery, they heard sounds of a sword battle. Investigating its source, they found a four-armed anthropomorphic feline warrior named Katmandu fighting the whirling dervishes. Whirling dervishes are a thing, but they have no mystical power that makes them look like tornadoes. Members of the Sufi Muslim religious order practice spinning in repetitive circles for meditation, a tradition more closely associated with an order in Turkey. Regardless, the turtles assisted Katmandu, who was also headed to the Crystal Palace, so he joined them. When questioned, Katmandu explained he was seeking to do good in this life to influence the fate of his future incarnations. Hence, he wished to become both a pupil and guardian to the Charlie Llama. The turtles were as perplexed as some readers might be, prompting Splinter to clarify. He shared that the Charlie Llama, his former mentor, was the reincarnation of Buddha. The Llama had forsaken Nirvana to teach and guide humanity. Upon their arrival at the palace, they found the Charlie Llama missing and were confronted by a four-armed whirlwind dervish skeleton. There's more to analyze here, which I'll address later. One person witnessed the skeleton transform into a ball of light and soar across the valley. A pregnant woman named Zhang La. She was there because Charlie Llama served as her midwife, and she was on the brink of childbirth. They quickly realized that the skeleton had flown to the palace of the dark art sorcerer, Mang Trasha. Surrounded by a choir of tantric monkeys, don't ask, Zhang La began her labor. Splinter requested Donnie to remain behind and assist him while the others set out to confront Mang Trasha. As they journeyed to the sorcerer's palace, Katmandu cautioned the turtles about the presence of Chinese military patrols. Indeed, this situation was about to become intensely controversial. Katmandu recounted to them that China had invaded Tibet in 1950, annexing the nation. He was on the verge of revealing the repressive measures Tibetans had endured when he was interrupted by the whirling dervishes, including the skeletal one. After subduing their attackers, the group entered the palace. There they uncovered Mang Trasha's alliance with the Chinese military. His scheme? To coerce Charlie Llama into publicly renouncing his claim as the Buddha and label his spiritual assertions as fabrications. With Charlie Llama discredited, China hoped to reinforce its grip over Tibet, with Mang Trasha ruling the region under Chinese oversight. Compounding the controversy, Mang Trasha's depiction bore an uncanny resemblance to a Yellow Peril caricature. For those unfamiliar with the term Yellow Peril, it refers to anti-Asian propaganda, largely targeting the Chinese. This narrative was rife with stereotypes that portrayed them as threats to Western culture and economy. During the ensuing confrontation, Charlie Llama, upon learning of Zhang La's childbirth, chose to depart this world peacefully. With Mang Trasha captured and Charlie Llama's spirit reincarnated in the newborn, Splinter realized he'd need to wait several years before he could reunite with his former mentor. Adhering to his original intent, Katmandu chose to remain and safeguard the new Llama. Again, there's a lot going on here, and I will go over it later. All I'll say is that all of this was reason enough to ban the story arc. But the story isn't over yet, and there's still one more colossal offense coming up. The turtles left Tibet and crossed the south of Iran on motorbikes. They then arrived at the port city of Jusk, where they boarded an oil tanker flying the Oman flag, as that was their next destination. It's worth mentioning that Raphael and Ninjara had already begun a relationship by this point in their journey. Several days later, they were crossing Saudi Arabia, headed to the Valley of the Fallen Stars, where the Black Stone of Mecca was said to have landed. Now, Splinter explained Islam to the turtles, but his version was riddled with inaccuracies and fictional additions. Since the story is centered around the Black Stone, here are the significant bits. The Black Stone, also known as Al-Hajar al-Aswad, was revered by the pre-Islamic Arabs of Mecca. They built the Kaaba to house it, a cubic structure that Muslims regard as the holiest spot on earth. In the year 610, a prophet named Muhammad heard a voice while meditating, declaring him the messenger of the god Allah. Throughout his life, he received more divine messages, which were later compiled into the Quran, leading to the foundation of Islam. And this is pretty much the simplified version of that story. However, the story introduces a twist, a white stone said to have fallen alongside the black stone. This white stone was taken by a nomad before the Meccans discovered its black counterpart. For 3 millennia, the white stone was covertly sold among the world's wealthiest men, each of whom tried and failed to steal the black stone. Together, these stones were rumored to grant immortality. This addition about the white stone is a fictional element of the comic book. However, it's interesting to note that Islamic narrative suggests the black stone was originally white when it descended from heaven, only to turn black because of humanity's sins. So maybe Steve Murphy used this as an inspiration for his story. Splinter's recounting of the history of Islam contains numerous errors, such as 1. There's no specific time frame like 3,000 years ago that's universally agreed upon regarding the heavenly origins of the black stone. 2. The Kaaba indeed housed numerous idols during pre-Islamic times, but stating that Jesus and the Virgin Mary were placed there is unverifiable. 3. The original description by Splinter mentions the year 610 BC as Muhammad's revelation. This was probably a typo, as it should have been AD. 4. Murphy says through Splinter that Muhammad formed a new religion, but this isn't exactly true. He and his followers believed that they were restoring the original monotheistic faith of Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and other prophets. I think Murphy used a poor choice of words in this case, but he got the concept right. 5. The first Muslims didn't worship at the Kaaba like Splinter suggested. They prayed towards it, but the Kaaba was filled with idols during the early years of Muhammad's prophethood. It wasn't until the conquest of Mecca that Muhammad and the Muslims cleared the Kaaba of idols. 6. Splinter mentioned that there were 800 million Muslims in 1992. It was probably hard to get an accurate number then, and it still is. The Muslim population of 1992 was believed to be somewhere between 1 billion to 1.2 billion people. While these errors could be problematic, their inclusion in a story that blends fact with fiction might mean they could have been intentional. However, the most egregious mistake was the depiction of Muhammad's face. This portrayal is controversial for various reasons, from avoiding idolatry to historical considerations. The prohibition of illustrating prophets also extends to figures like Moses and Jesus. Having said that, views on this particular prohibition can vary among different Muslim communities and sects, with some being very strict and others being more lenient, especially in historical or educational contexts. Since Murphy and Allen were trying to educate the young audience with this page, they might not have foreseen the potential backlash. Phew, we'll come back to the controversy later. Let's continue with the saga. On their way to a hill near Mecca, Splinter's group crossed paths with Shredder and Verminator X in disguise. They didn't recognize them, but Shredder had his suspicions. The Turtles took shelter in an abandoned village, but were soon ambushed by warriors and an anthropomorphic bird named Al-Falqa, who mistook them for thieves of the Blackstone. After realizing that the actual thieves were the individuals they'd previously met in the desert, the Turtles and their new allies were caught in a sandstorm. In the confusion, Shredder identified his old foe. He kidnapped Splinter while Verminator X trapped the others in a force field. By the time the field of force had dissolved, they'd gone to rescue Splinter and recover the Blackstone. Shredder and Verminator X were coming from the future and needed the Blackstone to put it together with the White Stone and power up their time slip generator. I went over all the details of this story in the Future Shark Trilogy video. Since Ninjara's specialty was stealing stuff, she replaced the Blackstone with an ordinary rock. The Turtles also managed to get Splinter back by invoking the debt Shredder had with them after they saved him from becoming Krang's slave. I also reviewed that story's details in the last Krang story video. There was also a backstory in one of these two issues about a kid visiting the Stump asteroid and meeting Cryin Houn, who revealed the origin of why he always mentions what his name is. Turns out that knowing his name is what allowed him to be reunited with his mother after a huge fire mixed all the similarly looking pups. I mention this small story because the last chapter of the saga involved Cryin Houn. After the Mecca episode, the turtles were walking through the desert on their way to subtropical Africa. By this point, the turtles gave up on Splinter. They were tired, so they stopped to rest. That's when they were approached by Cuddly, who offered to transport them back home, but only after a mandatory stop at Stump Asteroid. The turtles agreed and they were transported there. Once there, the turtles had little choice but to participate in the tournament again. What they didn't realize was that they would be pitted against each other. The winner would then face the enigmatic El Mysterio, who is obviously Cryin Houn in disguise. Donatello emerged as the champion of this tournament. After the competition, Cuddly transported the turtles back to Earth. However, instead of taking them home, he brought them to aid the Mutanimals against Null and the Four Horsemen in the crossover titled United We Stand, Divided We Fall. There really was no reason to ban this issue. Like the Tattoo episode, it contained nothing offensive. Plus, it would have provided more context in the IDW collection. Apart from the United We Stand crossover, another continuation to this story arc was the first April miniseries, which featured the return of Chien Khan. So what exactly is the problem with this saga? I believe the Islam issues could be easily rectified by removing the image of Muhammad. It's important to consider the time when IDW was collecting these issues. Volume 8, which included the first appearance of Ninjara, was published in 2014. Volume 9, which made the time jump to United We Stand, was released in 2015. In January 2015, two French Muslim terrorists and brothers stormed the offices of the French satirical weekly newspaper Charlie Hebdo in Paris. Armed with rifles and other weapons, they killed 12 people and injured 11 others. The terrorists identified themselves as members of Al-Qaeda. They targeted Charlie Hebdo because it frequently satirized political and religious leaders and had published cartoons of Muhammad. This led to multiple attacks on their offices and French embassies. So, one can understand IDW's hesitation about reprinting that issue. However, I don't believe that was the primary reason for them not reprinting the entire arc. I suspect their primary concern was a potential boycott from China. The Charlie Llama story, besides featuring a stereotypical caricature of a Chinese villain, also depicted the Chinese military attempting to oust the figure of the Charlie Llama. Let's delve into the Llama situation. The character was an apparent reference to the Dalai Lama, a real-life religious figure regarded as a reincarnation of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion and patron saint of Tibet. He's not a Buddha as portrayed in Charlie Llama's case. Bodhisattvas are enlightened beings who choose to stay in the cycle of rebirth to assist all sentient beings in attaining enlightenment. Murphy either simplified Charlie Llama's story for a younger audience or misunderstood the facts. Then there's the case of Tibet, an autonomous region within the People's Republic of China. The comic's representation of history is largely accurate. China entered Tibet in 1950, resulting in Tibet becoming a part of the People's Republic of China. However, a major uprising against Chinese rule occurred in 1959. Following its suppression, the 14th Dalai Lama fled to India and established a government in exile. The status of Tibet remains a contentious international issue. While pro-Tibetan independence activists criticize China's treatment of Tibet, China views Tibet as a vital part of its territory and condemns perceived foreign interference. Then there's the situation with the Panchen Lama, another important spiritual leader. Historically, the Panchen Lama and the Dalai Lama have had roles in recognizing and educating each other's reincarnations. After the death of the 10th Panchen Lama in 1989, the Dalai Lama recognized a young boy as the 11th reincarnation in 1995. Shortly after, the young boy and his family disappeared from the public eye, and are believed to be held under house arrest by the Chinese authorities. His whereabouts and well-being remain a matter of international concern and speculation. The Chinese government subsequently selected another boy as the official 11th Panchen Lama, a boy who's been educated to support the Chinese Communist Party's stance on Tibet. From the Chinese point of view, they never admitted to kidnapping the Panchen Lama, but they provided varying responses over the years. Sometimes they claimed they were secretly letting him have a normal life to protect him from being kidnapped by separatists. Despite the Charlie Llama story being published a few years before these events, reprinting it now could be perceived as satirization of real-life events. It's fascinating that Steve Murphy seemingly foresaw the Chinese government's interference with the llamas. This isn't the only instance where Murphy exhibited such foresight, as readers of The Puma Blues would know. Given the sensitivity surrounding Tibet and China's global economic clout, publishing a controversial story like this could risk a boycott of all Viacom products. This would undoubtedly upset many stakeholders. So why could Archie Comics publish these issues in the 90s? The 90s were a different era. Terrorism was predominantly seen as an external threat to the US. Also, Victor Gorlick, the then editor, might have found it challenging to discern fact from fiction in Murphy's tales, especially without the internet to verify facts. But let's not forget Murphy's true intentions. This saga was clearly crafted to educate young kids about topics they wouldn't typically encounter in TV shows or a predominantly US-centric school curriculum. Introducing them to Eastern cultures and countries likely broadened many horizons. However, inaccuracies in the details could have undermined that educational purpose. Such misunderstandings might even pose dangers. While Charlie Llama was a benign parody of the Dalai Lama, it could be misconstrued as an attempt to belittle his stature. Similarly, children might not realize that creating a depiction of Muhammad could be problematic in certain contexts. Moreover, presenting a yellow peril antagonist like Monk Trasha wasn't an appropriate representation even in 1992. I doubt that issues 33 to 35 can ever be reprinted in their original form. While potential revisions could be made to the Islam-related chapter, the Charlie Llama storyline remains broadly sensitive and would necessitate extensive modifications. Who knows? Perhaps in future decades, attitudes might shift, allowing the entire series to be reissued with disclaimers addressing its flaws. One could introduce censorship within the script itself by altering the names of locations and characters. However, such alterations might not sit well with longtime fans. It's regrettable, because this saga fundamentally transformed the adventure series, leading to the development of Raphael and Ninjara's relationship. And let's not forget that it introduced Inky. So what are your thoughts? How would you fix this problem? Do you think this story should be reprinted? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.